Well, hey everybody, I'm out here with my new Cybertruck at the Tesla Corpus Christi Lithium Plant today, and I got a chance to get another drone flight in, and I can tell you there are a lot of changes today and all over the site. So not just centered to where we see the rotating kiln and the cooler that has been installed, but also all of the supporting infrastructure for half of the production line, and the second half is already beginning with some of the superstructure being installed. Now with these series of images, we can get a good sense of what it looks like. First, here's an overall shot of how it looks today, and then I will do a comparison shot of the official rendering from essentially the same location. So this gives you an idea of how it is progressing to this point. And here's a closer in view of that rotating kiln and the cooler on the first half of the site. And this is what was started to have the bases constructed last August, and now they've got quite a bit of that installed. As you can tell, also nearby, a lot more of the concrete work, rebar, forms. It looks like bases for more of the large tanks, and a good portion of the hydrometallurgical portion of the processing section of the lithium plant. So it's definitely coming along. In addition to that, we can also see some work where the final processing facility will be. And also with this image, the foundation work and the clearing area where eventually the large warehouse will be built that will receive the initial raw materials called spodumene concentrate 6. In addition to that, we see a lot of materials and a lot of steel being stored on the north end of the facility, and it looks like this is all being done in preparation to continue the construction on the second half of the lithium plant. There is a lot more to see. I got a good drone flight in, and we'll go ahead and talk through the video as well. And I do hope that you enjoy these new views of the lithium plant. Also, the Cybertruck has been great to drive so far. I came down from San Antonio this morning, and so far so good. There has been a lot of interest with the Cybertruck, and as I was filming here, we had several of the railroad workers stop by and want to talk about the Cybertruck and take pictures, and here's just one example of that. So already it's a big hit. So without further ado, let's get into the drone flight. Let's take a look at what the lithium plant looks like. And again, thank you very much for your support. I do appreciate it.
This morning at the lithium plant, we get a chance to take a look at a lot of progress that has happened since the last time I was here back in November. And what we are looking at is the south end of the site. That's where the main factory is going to be located. We can see a lot of the work on the center and right-hand side of the screen. Also in the center screen now is where the large warehouse, which will be the processing facility for the raw materials called spodumene concentrate 6, will be delivered by a railhead, which currently does not exist, but it will be constructed on the right-hand side of the screen here soon. We also see this large clearing that looks like it's being used mostly for staging of materials, some very large items, and some other equipment that is necessary for the construction. Also looks like this ground has been improved with that lime process that we talked about in my 6-part series. Now here at the bottom of the screen, we can see these very large tanks and trailers that have been delivered, and I will give you a closer look. You can get a good sense of the size of these items. They're on some of those heavy lift trailers that are brought in by the semi-trucks, and also with the semi-trucks you can get a good sense of the scale. More earthwork is going on here in this section as well, and as we continue to progress towards the north end of the facility, a few things that we can see. These electrical or power poles that go off to the north connect to the new electrical switchyard that will be providing the power for this site. We also get a good look here at much of the materials and some of the steel items that will be associated with the lithium plant construction, all being stored on this part of the site. And also it looks like there's some of those rounded top kind of Quonset hut tents on the right hand side of the screen. And again, as I maneuver the drone around, this gives you a good view of this large staging yard on the north end of the factory. As we continue flying towards the east along the north end, you'll note that these ponds are full of water, and we talked about this also in my 6-part series. These are not brine tanks that would be used for the lithium processing. Instead, these are water management detention ponds. This area is low-lying and has a lot of rain runoff whenever that happens. Also, the groundwater table is pretty high, so they use these tanks to help ensure that the site will not flood. Also, we can see that in the middle of the screen, that kind of channel, it connects these north ponds to the south pond just to make sure that the water level is at the correct height around the site. And as I continue to pull away, this gives you a great view from the north looking back to the southwest across the entire facility. Also, you can get a good sense on the left-hand side of the screen next to the highway where the rail is coming in. It's parallel to that road, and that'll be where that connection is made over towards that raw material processing plant. As I bring the drone back down to a lower altitude and we fly along this side of the site, we get a good look at some of the trailers at the bottom of the screen near the ponds. Those have been added. There's also some pumping stations, and some of the water is also used for dust control around the site. So we can see some of those trucks were getting some of that water. Now on this side of the site, we see these trailers next to the greenbelt and the fence. And also there's still some equipment on the right-hand side is some additional equipment for the electrical switchyard. And we see some of the trailers, some workshops, and it looks like a new clearing is being prepared right next to the rail with that truck and that kind of that yellow device. You can see some of the workers around that area. We can also see that earthwork is being done in the left-hand side of the screen. You can see that excavator. So it looks like they're continuing to do additional expansion of the facility here. On the bottom of the screen next to those 3 telephone poles, that railhead again that comes along this part of the site and the road. This is about where that spur will be added to the railroad, and then it will proceed parallel to the plant that is coming into view in the center of the screen over to that raw material processing plant place. Now we can get a good idea of the layout here on the bottom where the tents are. That is the final processing where the lithium hydroxide would be packaged for shipping. In this middle section where you see the steel superstructure and a lot of the concrete bases, especially those kind of round ones, this is that hydrometallurgical portion of the site which would be using some aqueous kind of mixtures with the calcinated spodumene to do that processing to get to the lithium hydroxide. And this is a really good view of all of those foundations that are being made for those tanks that will be part of that hydrometallurgical processing. And then as we get further towards the calcination process, so you can see those two very large tubes. The one on the top is the rotating kiln. The one on the bottom is the rotating cooler. They are on very large bearings, and they have equipment that will turn these tubes, and that will help with the processing of the raw spodumene concentrate 6. It comes in alpha form, it will be made into beta form, and then that will be used as the input to that hydrometallurgical process. And the section here with those kilns is called the pyrometallurgical processing. Again, on the right-hand side of the screen, in that clearing is where the warehouse will be built and the materials will arrive and be sorted. As I continue to maneuver the drone on this side of the site, you'll note that there's a lot of the activity on the right-hand side of the screen with those kilns and some of the superstructure. But in the middle of the screen, we can see another one of these large, tall steel structures being erected. This is the second half of the processing plant. Now, there's going to be two parallel lines, and they will mirror each other. The one on the top of the screen is currently under construction to try to get the plant at least partially operational as soon as possible and creating some of that lithium hydroxide. And then the second half, which is just starting now, will be constructed the rest of this year, and hopefully it will become operational towards the end of 2024. And then once both of these are completed, they'll have two sets of the pyro, hydrological, and final processing portions of the site. And again, at the top right of the screen in that clearing, that will be where the warehouse will get that raw material. Now, as I continue to maneuver here, this gives you a great view of the current status of the site and how it is starting to show those two parallel processing. We see more work on the bottom left of the screen with some of those foundations, some of the formwork, and what looks to be more of the footings for some of the steel superstructure under construction. Also more trenching down the middle of the section. And then, of course, you'll see some of those round kind of foundations being made. Those will be for some of those large tanks that's part of that hydrometallurgical processing. A good view here of more of that superstructure on the left-hand side of the screen and more of the concrete slabs that's under construction. All of this area has been prepared with that lime mix in the soil to help prepare it and strengthen it. Due to most of the clays, it will also help prevent some of the swelling that the ground has due to water, and that would negatively affect the concrete structures that they're placing the entire superstructure on. So if you look back at my 6-part series, I go into a lot more detail about how that process has taken place. But with this good close-in view, I'm just trying to give you a great sense of the current status of the construction, some of the equipment, including tanks that have already been installed, and also the amount of work that still remains to get this site operational. Based on what I'm seeing, I think that Tesla is a little bit behind where they were hoping for this plant to be at this point in time. I would think that maybe the first half of the site will be operational maybe by the middle to the end of the summer, and then the second half would be closer towards the end of the year. But this is another great close-in view of those rotating kiln on the top, and on the left-hand side, that rotating cooler as part of that pyrometallurgical processing part of the site. You'll also notice that the cooler on the lower level on the left-hand side of the screen has got what looks to be white jackets around the cooler tube, and that's part of the process for maintaining the temperature, but also for it to be able to turn properly. And you'll see on one of those mounts, it looks like there's a kind of a white section holding up the end of that tube, and there's another one of those clamshells on the ground next to it, and that will be installed on the top of that tube. So eventually it'll be completely encased in that kind of a white clamshell structure around the cooler, which is that tube on the lower level. The upper level is that rotating kiln. This is a great shot close in of what that looks like. If you look around a couple of the sections of that tube, you'll see what looks to be kind of rings, and those are the mounts that sit onto the rotating mechanism, and that is what allows it to turn. It's kind of on large bearings, and that allows that free rotation. And here's a really good view also of the superstructure around those kilns and the coolers, and also some of the access stairways that are being put into that structure. On the ground next to this yellow crane, more of the preparation of the ground. Some of the footings are visible, and this whole section will have a concrete slab, very similar to what we see right now. And those bases for the tanks are very clear in this view. And you can also get a sense of just how heavily reinforced this area is with that slab and then the footings and those bases installed onto that slab. And another good view here of that superstructure around where much of the tanks are in this middle section of the plant. As I continue to maneuver the drone here on the east side, looking back towards the west, give you just a good overall view of how the main plant section is coming along. Again, you can see really clearly in this particular image where those two parallel processing portions of the plant would be. On the left-hand side of the screen is where that rail spur will be coming in, and on the top in that clearing next to those two towers is where that processing warehouse will be located as well. And this is a good view here, looking just right down the middle of the entire site. On the right-hand side, you can see these trailers coming into the view on the section where we had the groundbreaking, and you can also see kind of in the middle, very small, there's that archway that says Tesla Lithium, and that again is where that groundbreaking took place. As I bring the drone up to a higher altitude and continue to fly further towards the east, this gives you just that great bird's eye view of the entire site, how it is coming along. The main render that you have seen and I showed at the beginning in the intro is pretty much the left-hand side of the screen. Everything to the right, which would include those trailers with that lithium tunnel and archway, the materials that are being stored on the right, the water detention ponds, all of this is not visible in that render. So the site continues to grow. The other thing is you can see that clearing on the upper left, that's sort of the southern boundary of the site. And then north of the water detention ponds, you can see that large grass clearing and that roadway with those power lines going to the substation. All of that is also part of the expansive area. So I hope that you enjoyed these views and this update on the Tesla Lithium Plant. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Have a great day.